with us today. We are students of UXD, and my name is Julia Fernandez. I'm a co-founder of Students of UXD, along with my partner in crime, Vicky Bo. You can see her over there. I'm so excited because if you are new or if you are old, we always have this. We always say that Students of UXD is an all-student run organization for students of UX design. We are our mission really is to create an engaging community for students of all ages pursuing user experience design. So it doesn't matter if you're a boot camper, someone who's transitioning, someone who is completely new, we are here to support you. And now on to our team, those beautiful faces, and some of them are here today. We're so excited to be with you, and I want to give a formal shout out to all of our contributors. You see Amanda, our copywriter, Rohan, our outreach coordinator, Kendra, our social media coordinator, and Donald, our events coordinator, as well as Mahogany, our content strategist on there as well. So something that we want to shout out for this month is that we are spotlighting Catalyst Designathon. We're partnering with Catalyst 2021 for their annual Designathon happening from March 26th to March 28th, and it's open to all undergraduate students who are currently living in the United States. The participants will brainstorm areas of opportunity, generate solutions, build prototypes, and present to industry professionals all in just 40 hours. So if you're ready to fire up your creative brains, sign up with the link in the chat that Vicky will be adding on. So make sure to check that out. And as always, we love hearing from you. We love, love, love engagement. We thrive off the engagement that you give us on LinkedIn and on Instagram. So make sure to share your takeaways. I'm sure Miguel would love to hear what you have to say that you learned from this event. Make sure to tag Students of UXD, tag Miguel, and hashtag SOUXD. And we have stickers as well that we'll be giving away when we hear engagement from you. And without further ado, I want to give a little intro to today's speaker. Miguel is an experienced design strategist, educator, and entrepreneur from New York. He is currently the director of product design and strategy at NYC Company, NYC's main marketing and tourist arm. He specializes in design strategy, design process, and design systems, and focuses on GovTech, civic design, and inclusive design. He is a UX instructor who previously taught at General Assembly. I know some people, shout out if you are here from General Assembly as well, currently teaches at Career Foundry, and also runs an educational UX community named UX Come Up for beginner and student UXers. He also leads design and strategy at Rita Creative, an agency and startup that he founded in 2016, supporting creative initiatives led by women, and people of color, So without further ado, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you, Miguel.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Thank you so much for that intro. That was one heck of an intro. I'm gonna ask you to record that for me so that I can use it at different events. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let me know with some head nods if y'all can see it. Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me, Students of UXD. Shout out to the Students of UXD community. Y'all are doing some really big things. I'm a really big fan of what y'all are doing. Congratulations on everything. Before I start, make sure for those of y'all that are joining through me to really connect with the Students of UXD community. I really admire what they're doing specifically for beginner UXers. So make sure to follow along what they do. So I'm really excited to talk about design systems. Design systems are one of the main focuses of my career. I'll tell you more about my design system history in a few minutes, but the reason why I'm always excited to talk about design system in the context of beginner UXers is because I find that whether you're self-taught, whether you're a boot camp grad, whether you're a college program grad, whatever one of those avenues you've taken, when many new UX designers get their first job and they have to work with a design system, something happens. There's a huge gap that they identify. The design system you have to work with ends up being so much bigger than what you thought a design system was. So this is a talk specifically for UX beginners. This is for students. This is for recent grads. This is for self-taught folks. If you are looking for an in-depth deep dive into components in Figma, into symbols in Sketch, this is not the talk for you, but I hope you stick around because we're gonna have a good time. But anyway, I'm trying to prevent that feeling, that gap that you identify from happening to you when you join your first gig. So one of the reasons why this is so hard to talk about is because as cool as design systems are, they're big, complicated things. They're massive. So it's not usually something that people can easily share to beginners. However, I think that it is so important that we update that UX curriculum to include a couple of sessions, whether at GA, whether at CF, whether at any UX curriculum, to include a couple of classes on design systems because they're so, so important. All right. So with that being said, I want to know in the chat what kind of avenue you've taken to come up in UX. Are you a self-taught designer? Are you a bootcamp grad? Are you a college program grad? Let me know where you are, what you do right now, where you're coming from, just so I can get a sense. And this is a little bit of practice for how we're going to manage this entire talk. I'm going to be asking y'all questions and asking you to really contribute to the talk to make it as dynamic as it possibly can be. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of bootcamp, a lot of self-taught. I'm seeing a few collegiate programs here and there. That is super cool. Awesome, awesome. I love all of these answers. Thank you so, so much. All right, so I think we're ready to jump right in. So what are design systems? Whoa, 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 hold up. First, we're gonna talk about what design systems are not. For those of you that are new to a workshop with me, I'm gonna keep things really, really real. I'm not gonna mince words. I'm not trying to, be the fluffy instructor or workshop facilitator. We're gonna get right to the chase. And so warning, what I'm about to say might sting a little, but I'm doing it because I care about y'all, all right? So number one, a design system is not this thing that I see in a lot of portfolios and case studies. So I am director of product design at NYC Company, where I am a hiring manager. So I hire people, I interview people, I look at a lot of portfolios all the time. And I see this in case studies, a section on the case study that says design system, and it has like typography, color palette, logo, and icons. I'm so, so sorry, but this is not a design system, all right? Number two, a design system is not symbols in Sketch or components in Figma. I am so, so sorry, but this is not a design system. When beginners start with design systems, I see them jumping right into this stuff. Design systems are so much larger than these two things. I say this not to discourage y'all from creating symbols or components, jumping into these things. I say this to really set up the rest of this session where we will zoom out and understand the breadth and purpose behind design systems. There was such a great introduction done by Julia that I won't even introduce myself anymore. I'll just show you the aesthetic of these slides. So here I am. Here's a cool picture of me. I think I'm going to update it because I'm not super satisfied with it. Here's a nice little photo of a Brooklyn street. Because I'm from Brooklyn, you can find me anywhere. That's the horn that is verifying that I'm from the city. You can find me anywhere online at Miguel Makes. I work for New York City, as was said. I also teach, as was said, but I also have a YouTube channel where I share videos for beginners. So make sure to connect with me there. I'm going to be sharing a ton of design system content moving forward. Shout out to everybody that has been supporting that YouTube channel. Julia also has a really cool YouTube channel. Mine is not as cool as hers, but I'm trying my best. So now I would like to walk you through my design systems journey, just to kind of set the tone here. So I do have a background in computer science and front-end development. I actually started my career in UX as a front-end developer for a couple of years. I then transitioned over to UI design. So I have a good sense of that, balance, both sides of the world. So my first job as a UX designer, I was actually lucky enough to be on a UX team that was building a design system. So I actually didn't really have a choice, but it was so cool. And I fell in love that I was like, this is perfect. And I never looked back. Design systems were the rest of my career from that point on. So then I built my own design system for my own company, Reader Creative, which is the foundation of the website platform that we've built. We've built like our own version of a WYSIWYG. And then we have another design system that I built that I was actually contracted for on the side. That was a really cool opportunity. And then I'm in the middle of building a design system for New York City. I'm not saying that's a flex. I'm saying that because I think that's so freaking cool. And it shows the scale that design systems can have. You can build them for companies, for private organizations, yes, but you can also build them for cities, for states, for countries, which I'll get to in a second. So let's introduce design systems with all of that being said. All right, so we talked about what design system was not, and sometimes maybe that stung a little bit, but now let's talk about what design systems are. So design systems is not just one thing, one more not, and then I go to the positive. So design systems is not a design system is not just one thing. A design system is made up of a few things. Specifically, it's made up of three things: the design, the code, the thinking. The design, the code, the thinking. It's kind of like when Steve Jobs was introducing the iPhone, he was like, it's a phone, an internet communicator, a music device, a phone, an internet communicator, a music device. This is that same kind of vibe. So the design, the code, the thinking, these are not three separate things. I'm stealing his words. These are one thing working together. So let's go step by step. The design, this is what most of y'all assume a design system is: working in your sketch file, working in your Figma file, you know, trucking away at the design. Yes, this is one a huge component of what a design system is. The second thing though, and this is what many beginners forget: for every component that you design in your Figma file, for every symbol that you create in your sketch file, there is a one-to-one match in code to every component. All right. So if you have, let's say, a card, oh, wait a minute, I have a card right here where it says large tile card. That is from an artboard in the sketch file that my team has created. Now you see that same card in action on our homepage. And if you inspect it, the specs, the padding, the margin, the font sizes, everything is one-to-one from what you see in my sketch file to what is on the interface, on the live interface. And then the third thing that a design system is, it's the thinking. So this is what I'll refer to as the documentation hub. But design system is not just design. Design system is guidelines, rules, specifications. So there's this universe of these three things, and these three things together make a design system. Now, of course, I'm not saying that y'all will be writing the code that brings these components from Sketch to life. Of course, I'm not saying that y'all have to create a website that represents the documentation hub. I'm just saying that when you work at an organization, this is a universe that you might see referred to as a design system. All right, so the three parts, more specifically, the design is referring to the design system design file. Number two, the code, the live product, that's referring to the code base. And number three, the documentation hub. That is what I mean by the thinking. So where do you start? With all of that being said, where do you start? This seems a little overwhelming, Miguel. I hear what you're doing, but bring me back down a little bit. All right, bet. So we're gonna start by asking ourselves a few questions. The first question is, what is the purpose of the design system? So the title of this event is the what and the why behind design systems, right? So let's explore that why in a little bit of detail. So that is one question we're going to answer. We're also going to answer, are we starting from scratch? This is a super important question when learning design systems. And number three, who is part of the team? What does team mean? We'll answer it. Let's start with the first. What is the purpose of a design system? Well, I've identified a few purposes for you. Maybe though, you have a purpose that I didn't include on the following slide. So I really want you to think about, why does your team need a design system? Another controversial thing that I'll say is, You shouldn't just build a design system because it's cool, right? Not just because it's a buzzword kind of a thing. There should be a reason. It should serve a purpose. So in this case, here are some examples. Maybe you want a single source of truth. Maybe you have some standards in a Photoshop file from back in the Dizzle. Maybe you have a Figma file. Maybe you have, you know, some standards written in a Google Doc. You just want one place where all of this lives. Super, super important. Maybe you have a really large product like we do at NYC Company. Our website, the main product that we oversee, is pretty large. So we need some consistency to bring it all together. Number 3, you want to improve workflow. One of the main takeaways that I want y'all to have after this event is workflow, 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 workflow. Design systems just super optimize a product design and development team's workflow. Maybe you have multiple products that you're working with. Maybe you work at a startup that's building multiple apps and you're trying to bring them all together with some sort of shared design language. And lastly, maybe there's a specific purpose why you need a design system. So that is what I mean by purposeful guidelines. All right. Are we starting from scratch? Number 2, question number 2, are we starting from scratch? In true UX design fashion, I created a flow for y'all to help y'all answer this question. Get your Command Shift 4s ready, if you know, you know, for the next slide. So this is a flow that I recommend you to follow. So the first question, is it a new product? If it is a new product, well, it's easy. You're going to build a design system from scratch, right? If it is not a new product, we're going to ask ourselves, is there an existing design system? If there is an existing design system, well, you have to build on top of that design system, obviously. If there's not an existing design system for the existing product, you're not going to build a new design system quite yet. You're going to do what we call a UI audit. The streets were so quiet before this event started, and as soon as it hit 1:30, it's been beeping up the wazoo, so I apologize for that. A UI audit is an analysis of the current product in regards to its styles, components, any reusable components, and any other examples of consistency that you can identify. You're going to document that in any table-like format. You're just going to take note of that, screenshot anything. And then you're going to start a design system from scratch that is based off of those existing styles. This is the stuff that we don't talk about often enough, but this will give you some direction when you get that first new gig and you're tasked with, let's create a design system. All right. The third question, who is part of the team? This is a little bit of a double entendre. It doesn't mean that there's a dedicated design system team. This might mean that there is a group of people that touch the design system. And these are all of those people. Of course, ourselves. Also, UX researchers. A lot of people highly underestimate how much UX research plays a role in design system creation. Obviously, developers, oftentimes UX writers, project managers, and stakeholders. All right, let me know in the chat, yes or no, if you've heard of the following term. So now we're going to move on to another part of introducing design systems. This is really the foundation of design systems thinking. So has anybody heard of atomic design? Sweet. Yep. Cool. Tiffany, I got you. Joanne, I got you. We're going to talk about it. Erico, I love it. I love the yeses, but I also love the nos because it means that I'm going to be providing some value to you. So atomic design is a way of thinking about design systems. I would argue that it is one of the most fundamental ways of approaching design systems in UX in general. And it was created by this gentleman named Brad Frost, one of my personal inspirations when I was very into development and more of the technical sides of things. I was pretty much basically stalking him on the internet, digesting every piece of content that I could by him. And then he came out with this thing where he started a couple of blog posts where he started talking about consistency and reusable components. And I was like, what is this? And then he gave it a name, atomic design. And that like rocked the UX industry. And it's been rocking the UX industry ever since. If you want to take design systems seriously, you need to read this book. And If anyone asks me for help after this talk and they didn't read this book upon my recommendation, you're going to make me really, really sad. So I recommend reading this book. It is super, super good. It helps you just contextualize the idea of design system in such a magnificent way. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler, a little bit of an intro to it to incentivize you to read the book. So the whole idea of atomic design is that we're using atoms as some sort of metaphor to help explain how different elements on an interface build on top of each other. So what are the most basic building blocks of matter? Atoms, right? We're going to take it back to whatever class this was taught in high school. So atoms are the basic building blocks of matter. So in the same way, we're going to identify some basic building blocks of our user interface. Some examples. What are some examples? Throw them in the chat. Give me some examples of a basic building block in a user interface. Guesses are welcome. A button, that is a superb answer. A button, I love that. A label, super, super cool. I can't read all of them that quickly, but I love all of these answers. None of these answers were wrong. All of these were right. Let's take a couple of these. A button, a label, an input, a button, a label, an input. What does that sound like? A button, a label, an input. What does that sound like? A bar, a form, right? That sounds like a form. Yeah, a search bar, absolutely. So James is ahead of the game. When we combine these basic building blocks together, we see a molecule. We create a molecule because molecules are groups of atoms that are bonded together and are the smallest fundamental units of a compound. Now, when you combine multiple molecules, now y'all get it, we create organisms. So let's take a form. Let's take some other molecule. Let's say like a list. Let's take another list. What does that sound like? A form, a list, and another list. How about if you look at the screen right now and you look at my hands, this is the entire interface, right? This is the top. Now we're gonna go to the bottom. A form, a list, and a list. A form, a list, and a list. The footer, right? You have some footer navigation links and maybe you have like an email sign up, right? So what happens when we start combining sections of an interface together? The footer, we have the navigation. Let's say we have a masthead. Now we start to create a template. The only difference between a template and a page is that a page has the content filled in. So a page is a manifestation of the utilization of a template. All right. And all of this comes from the idea of modularity. So this idea that we're looking at the interface as a collection of Lego pieces that we're just building figures with, right? We're using them, we're piecing them together, and we're building something with those Lego pieces, right? So this actually comes from something that one of the OGs from the internet put together. This is a very short piece. If you Google Tim Berners-Lee modularity, you will find this awesome piece by this gentleman. It is a really easy read. I definitely recommend you do so. Now, let's continue to intro this. So we talked about some questions that we want to ask ourselves. We introduced atomic design, which is super, super important in design systems thinking. Now, let's answer the question that is on everybody's minds. All right, design systems, I hear you, Miguel. I feel you, Miguel. But what is the difference between brand guidelines and style guide and UI library and component library and pattern library and design systems? In less than 5 words, I want to challenge a few of y'all to tell me what you think the answer is, excluding those that have been in a similar version of this talk with me before, because I know you know the answer. So what is the difference between all of these things? I want to challenge you to answer this question in less than 5 words. Oof, stumped. All right. Let's Rebecca, you are the MVP. Yes, yes, yes. A design system includes all of these things, right? Rebecca gets some sort of prize courtesy of students of UXD. I'm just kidding. Design system includes all of these things. It includes brand guidelines. It includes style guides. It has some version of an X library inside of it, right? And in many cases, much more than that. So a design system is just the umbrella thing that contains all of these things. You have all of these things within a design system. It's really, really important to have that understanding just to be able to conceptualize the scale that is design systems. All right. So here are some examples, really, really basic examples, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff. So Apple has one of the most popular design systems. It's called the HIG, the Human Interface Guidelines. Then we have Lightning's design system. This is a design system by Salesforce. This was one of the design systems that has influenced me the most, and also Atlassian's, which I'll show you in a second. Also, these screenshots are so old because I've been doing different versions of this talk for many years. So these are probably like years old. So I apologize for these outdated screenshots. When you go to the websites, they'll look way more up to date. So I am a little bit of a fraud there. So the United States also has a design system. As much as we have going on in this wonderful country that we have to work on, at least we have a freaking design system, right? So we can be rest assured that we at least have a design system. I'm into GovTech, I'm into civic design. As Julia said, GovTech, civic design, and inclusive design, those are the things that I focus on in my career. And so design systems as they pertain to government and other public facing entities, that's something that I super focus on. Obviously, Google has a design system, material design. And this is IBM's design system. They've recently really updated this resource, so I recommend you taking a look at it. And then Atlassian, which I mentioned. All of these, just to go back to something I said before, all of these screenshots are not the design systems themselves. They are the third part of what I said a design system is, the documentation hubs. So if you go to material design on Google, that's not the design system. That is the documentation hub of the design system that is articulating the design system. It's really important for y'all to compartmentalize these things in that way. All right, now let me hit y'all with a definition that I spent a lot of time working on. And this I am trying to submit into some sort of a word category for the craziest run-on sentence of all time. A design system is a living product that offers a collection of visual styles, components, patterns, and UX guidelines that are all informed by a set of design principles with the purpose of serving an ecosystem and improving the product design and development process. I need some water after that. So we're going to come back to this definition and we're going to break it down further and further. But there's certain key phrases that I want y'all to take from this. Living product. What does that mean? We are already building a living product, right? Collection of all of these things that we said comprise a design system. Set of design principles. What is a design principle? And what does it mean to serve an ecosystem? I want y'all to look at this and try to break it. Try to, make this as simple as possible by picking out key phrases. So we're going to talk about how to prepare for a design system. And this is a very light overview. I would love to one day, maybe students of UXD and myself, we can collab on maybe like a 4-hour or 5-hour session on going way deeper into design systems. But this is just light. This is very, very light. All right. So defining design principles, component inventory setup, consistency, and structure. All right. Design principles. What are design principles? All right, let's start there. So number one, design principles. I have a few definitions for y'all, but this is really, really important. And I'll make the point at the end of these quotes, all right? Design principles are widely applicable laws, guidelines, biases, and design considerations which designers apply with discretion. This one's a little abstract. Let's try to get a little bit more specific. This is just starting us off, all right? Let's take this one from Envision. Design principles are a set of values that act as a compass for your product. I really, really like this. They are an agreed upon truth, almost like a contract. The guideposts that keep your entire team on the same path. All right, so This starts to chip away a little bit more. Design principles should be specific, nuanced, and actionable. What about this line over here that is not a quote, this one I just wrote. The point of a design system is to build a universe of consistent and reusable components. So the point of design principles is to make sure your reusable components remain consistent. Who doesn't love a good flipper, right? So this is really, really important. A lot of y'all jump into creating a design system without creating design principles. So you have no way of holding yourself accountable to a shared set of values, right? So a consistent to a set of values. How are you going to create consistency in the design system and therefore in your end product if you're not declaring some set of values, right? So let's end with this one here. For this section. Design principles help you establish the values of your product and then make decisions that uphold the integrity of those values, the integrity of those values. When you have a set of agreements to come back to throughout an iterative design process, your team suddenly automatically has a shared language, and set of criteria to use while working together. So what I gather from this is that design principles are about accountability. We need something to hold the team accountable, right? And I lied before, I do have one last one here. So product design principles, this is from the Nielsen Norman Group, are value statements. Value statements. So what does this really mean? Let's cut to the chase here. Enough BS, right? So a design system starts with language, not components. A design system starts with language, not components. All right. So while design system starter files are a good, quick setup point, they skip so many steps. Design systems require lots of thinking that are all attributed to language, whether that's the purpose of a design system, which we spoke about, whether that's the design principles, whether that's how you name your components, or whether that's the actual guidelines and rules that you write and put on your documentation hubs. All right. I'm going to take one pause here and just to say, I know this is a lot. I'm hitting you with a lot, one thing after the other. It's kind of by design. I'm trying to squeeze in as much as I can squeeze into an hour. So, 40 minutes. And like Vicky said, we will be taking questions and I'll be answering them at the end. So if you have anything that you're wondering, just jot it down or contribute to the chat with it, and then we'll answer it at the end. But I just want to keep going here. All right. So let me know in the chat by saying yes if we're feeling good. Are we feeling good? Drop a bunch of yeses in the chat. Yes, 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 yes. I want at least 20 yeses just to keep the spirits up here. Make sure we're all doing good. Make sure to drink some water. Here's your reminder. Awesome. Cool. Perfect. All right. So here are some examples of some design principles. Airbnb has one of the best design principles in my view. Unified, universal, iconic, conversational, and then they have an explanation of what these mean, right? So here are some. This is an example for some inspiration here. Here's another example of design principles that are a little bit more simple. By Atlassian, these are more like statements, like value statements, like what Nielsen Norman Group said. Build trust in every interaction. Connect people to collaborate better. Match purpose and feel familiar. Drive momentum from end to end. Guide mastery for greater value. Where is this coming from? Who's making this up? Did somebody just, have an epiphanic moment and then this just came out of them suddenly spiritually? No, this comes from somewhere, and I'm going to explain to you how you can create your design principles. But if you want more examples, there's this super awesome resource, principles.design, with like an infinite amount of design principle examples. So this is so huge. All right. Now, here's my 3-step how-to guide on how to design principle, all right? How to create design principles. I try to break grammar when I can, but it doesn't always work like it didn't there. Number 1, what is the purpose of our design system? Why do we need a design system in the first place? You can answer this question to identify some design principles. Going back to my slide before, there are certain reasons why you need a design system. Maybe one of those reasons is consistency, right? Which is that second one in the top right there. Well, that could be a design principle. Going back to the 3-step guide, what do your users care about? This is where research starts to come in. What do your users care about? What are your users like, right? What is your target audience? Are they younger? Are they skewing younger? Are they Gen Z? Maybe one of your design principles can therefore be impact, right? You want your design system components to be impactful, right? Maybe you're designing for the government like I am. And therefore, you need your components to be very simple and to the point, no fancy stuff, right? So maybe simple would be your design principle there. And then lastly, what is our experience direction? So how do we want users to perceive our product? Do we want them to take it seriously? Do we want them to be fun? Take it in a fun way? Do we want them to feel supported? Do we want them to feel safe? Do we want them to feel positive? These are all different things that you can utilize to come up with your design principles. I'm going to step up the pace a little bit because I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A. Julia, I got your message. I appreciate you. So the point of this was start with language, not components. Start with language, not components. If you're starting with components, you're moving too fast and you're not setting yourself up for design system success. All right, now component inventory setup. So this is super important. So now you started with language, right? Now you might want to go into Figma or Sketch. Not yet, not yet. Still hold your horses still. All right, that is step 3. Step 2 is you want to set up a component inventory. So this is a backlog, a list, a database, whatever fancy word you want to use. That means a collection, a place to store all of the components that you're going to be creating, right? And the purpose is to create this list so that you can track how your components come to life. They don't just come to life in Figma. They come to life conceptually. And by that, I mean they have a life cycle. Each of these components have a life cycle, and that life cycle could look something like this. And I say could because this is literally the life cycle that we have assigned to components at my company, at where I work at, excuse me, my 9-to-5, NYC Company. So the first, backlog. The components that are in the queue that haven't built yet, that are just chilling there waiting to be designed out. And then we do research on every single component. Research to see how competitors are designing those components. Research to, identify maybe what are some previous versions of those components that were used that didn't prove to have great usability. And then we design them. Then we test them, another opportunity for research. Then we create documentation for them, guidelines, specs, sizes, rules, frequency, when you use, how you use, why you use. Then you develop them. So then you send it off. So if you're working at a company, then you would send off the component, this bubble of information with design, with research, with, guidelines to the dev team. And then they build it. And then it's published on the design system. So all of this happens before publish. And a lot of students just go straight to publish, right? Which is why you may be creating an incomplete design system. So the question is, where is this life cycle tracked? And it's tracked in what I was referring to, a component inventory. All right, so I'm gonna show y'all this free resource that I have for y'all that I created on Notion for you to track your component inventory, all right? And this is what it looks like. I actually already had it open. Here it goes. This is a document free for you that I'm going to share with you through another document at the end of this. And here you have a space for your design principles. And then down here, you have a table set up for you to start to iron out your component inventory. Let's click on status. Boom, life cycle. Here is where you will track the life cycle of your component. These components go through a process just like design does. just like our UX plan does, right? It goes through a process. This is super, super, super important, and it could not be understated. All right, cool. So lastly, I'm gonna try to do this in 2 minutes, y'all. Wish me luck here. Consistency and structure. I mean this in the nicest way possible. The thing that breaks my heart most often by beginners and students and entry-level UX designers is how terrible y'all are with spacing. All right. But again, I'm saying that because I care and I want you to be the best you can be at spacing. All right. Tell me in the chat if you struggle with spacing, but you just never really thought about it and you've been meaning to improve your spacing game. Let me know by saying, yes, me, I feel that, I'm with you. Thank you for the vulnerability. All right. So this is going to be the craziest, quickest, I don't know what other word to add here for impact, the fastest mini lesson on spacing. All right, let's get it. So you can't create a design system without understanding spacing. All right, you cannot create a design system without understanding spacing. Spacing is all about consistency. Spacing is imperative to consistency. All right. Think systems of space. In a user interface, there are two systems of space, horizontal and vertical. When we're referring to a horizontal system of space, what are we referring to? In the chat, real quick, less than 20 seconds. What are we referring to with horizontal system of space? Grid, yes, absolutely. Grid, 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 rows, columns. Columns is, I think, what you were referring to. Columns, grid, all right? On desktop, that grid is usually 12 columns. On mobile, a popular column structure is 4 columns. Let's go back to desktop, though. The way that you utilize columns is to organize structure and spacing, but horizontally speaking, so you could have 2 even sections left and right, each occupying 6 columns. You could have 3 even sections, each occupying 4 columns. You can have 4 even sections, each occupying 3 columns, and you can mix and match. You can have fun. When I look at this,
oh no, I know you're you have to talk to the people at some.
When I look at this, I don't look at gray boxes. I look at the Facebook header, right? With your profile image and then that cover photo, right? So you start to mix and match, but not all elements on a grid have to fit into the columns. Some things like a nav will go beyond the 12 columns, right? But then everything else content-wise must fit within those 12 columns. Let's go quickly to vertical spacing. So let's utilize the same grid. Now, we're not gonna duplicate that grid, tilt it 90 degrees, and then we have vertical spacing. That's not how it works, all right? So what we do is we have structure here, right? So these are, let's say, the boxes, the sections, the different areas of the interface that we created using the horizontal system of space, right? But now, how do we apply vertical spacing? Well, 2 things. Margin. Margin is the space between sections and elements. And now we have padding. Padding is the space from the content inside of sections to its edges, right? And so this really tells an important story when you bring this together, because when I see a mock-up or an interface, I don't see the interface. I see all of these orange, green, and lines together. Now, when I look at anything, that is how I look at an interface. All right, information architecture, I'm gonna step it up a lot more. So if I lose y'all, I'm so sorry. I just wanna squeeze in as much as I can squeeze in here. Mods, if it's all good, I'm gonna go to 2020 and then 10 minutes for Q&A. If that's cool with you. So, all right. So each component is not a single component. I want this to be one of those epiphanic moments in this talk, all right? You're not always creating one component. In the chat, less than 15 seconds, tell me why each component is not one single component. I kind of already shared the answer with y'all. Oof, not quite there yet. All good, Catherine. Not quite there yet. We're thinking the right things. Keep going, keep going, keep going. These are really good answers, by the way. These are really good answers. Medium, the answer is medium, because you have a component for every different breakpoint. You don't have one component, you have a mobile component of the same component. You have a tablet version of that component, and you have a desktop version of that component, right? But I wanna say these were all fantastic answers. I'm not just saying this to gas y'all up. Those were the best answers that I have gotten from this kind of workshop. So really, really good answers. But I was referring to each component has 3 different versions: the mobile version, the tablet version, and the desktop version. And this is actually one way to organize your first design system information architecture, right? So you have, let's say, the folder cards, and then within cards, you have mobile cards, tablet cards, desktop cards. There's another way to organize your design system though. So here you can have a folder of all of the mobile components, then you have a folder of all of the tablet components, and then you have a folder of all the desktop components. This is the type of stuff that a design system starter file doesn't tell you, right? This is getting deeper, but we're simplifying it for beginners. And then lastly, bonus, choosing components. I want to set y'all up for success by giving y'all a little preview into what I've done at NYC Company. All right. So we riffed off of atomic design, and you can see this here. But I created my own version of a design system in terms of architecture. So foundations, by that I mean atoms. Components, by that we combine molecules and organisms together, and it is very organized. And then lastly, scenarios, which we are referring to templates and pages, right? So for foundations, here are some things that I would recommend all of y'all who are serious about design systems to take on: color palette, typography, icons, logos, grid, and spacing. The thing that I see a lot in portfolios and case studies that is called design systems, right? Components, I would recommend y'all start with these. These are very basic: alerts, pop-ups, or modals, accordions and tabs, badges and buttons, cards, header, footer, fields, forms, and navigation and pagination. Very basic components. Lastly, scenarios: a homepage template, a landing page template, an information page template, 404 template, and a form page template. Form page meaning like contact page, all right? So we just went over how to prepare for a design system, the light version, because this is so crazy and in depth, but I tried my best to synthesize as best as I could. And we explained the 3 parts of a design system, and hopefully this universe makes more sense now. So let's end with that definition. A design system is a living product that offers a collection of visual styles, components, patterns, UX guidelines that are all informed by a set of design principles with the purpose of serving an ecosystem and improving the product design and development process. That was a heck of a sentence. So let me give you a simpler one. A design system is a complete set of design standards, documentation, and principles, along with the components, patterns, and scenarios that help you achieve those standards. In other words, a design system tells you why and how, all right? So follow me on YouTube. I'm going to be dropping so many videos on design systems for the rest of this year. I haven't launched a video in the last couple of months because I was sick at the top of the year. I caught a really weird stomach situation, but I'm feeling a lot better. So I've been recording. My camera's over there. Follow me on Instagram. I'm going to start posting a bunch of videos, specifically reels on design systems starting this week. Follow me on LinkedIn. I would love to plant the seed for maybe students of UXD and UX come up to maybe partner together and collab and do some work together. I would love to answer any of y'all questions, but thank you so much for having me, students of UXD, and I really appreciate the platform. So thank you so much.
That was so good. Holy crap. Yeah, everyone, I'm like gonna clap with like 1.5 hands, but woo, that was so good. I feel like I had just what do you call it? Like when you recharge a battery and you're like, I want to do design systems now, like, like bring it, you know? Those like that slide, like those slides that visualize, even just like the smallest things that you did that visualize like spacing for me, it just made me connect dots in my brain that I just like for some reason I already knew, but it just didn't, fit together like the puzzle pieces that they should. So thank you so much for that explanation, and everyone as well. Like, if you have any questions for Miguel while he's here, please go ahead on the chat and ask them. But while we're waiting, we actually have a couple questions already, Miguel. So Anita asks, when you're creating responsive components, are you doing so according to each grid system? Like you said, the 12, 8, and 4 column grids?
Yes. However, this is where, and this, I always want to share so much in these 1 hour talks, but it's very difficult, as y'all could imagine. So one of the things that I didn't get into that could have occupied 15 minutes of this talk is how responsive design plays a part in design system component creation. And so that is actually one of the videos that I have planned for, I think, 6 weeks from now. But the short answer is yes. And the other answer that I can give you is that you have to take into account how elastic the component is, because even though you may produce 3 breakpoints, you have to account for the scalability from one breakpoint to the other. Breakpoint is what we're referring to when we talk about those different grid sizes. So the mobile one, that has a grid point of, let's say, 375. The tablet one, that has a breakpoint of, let's say, 769. And then the third one has a breakpoint of, let's say, 1080.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a like very beginner web design class, so I remember what breakpoint is. So whatever. That's awesome. I'm going to keep looking. RPS, how do you start to establish a design system when you are a product direction and brands are constantly under flux or major redesigns? That's a pretty interesting question.
So two things there, two of the greatest misconceptions of design systems. Number one, they limit you. And number two, they're not good if you're constantly evolving. The point of a design system is to make those two things simpler. Number one, when you have a design system, they save you from having to think about the things that you would otherwise be thinking about always. For example, when you're creating a design, and I know all of y'all have done this, you have your design, you created, let's say, I don't know, like the navigation. How many of the times have y'all either copy and pasted the navigation or redesigned some version of that same navigation because you lost that old file, right? So design system helps you just not have to think about these basic parts of the interface and just create it once, boom, done. The second thing is design systems actually help optimize a redesign effort because you have the infrastructure of the product, and all you're doing is customizing things and layering things on top of each other. And that is why this talk for beginners is so important, because if you skip too many steps, it's like the basement of a house, the foundation of a house. It'll crumble quick. But the stronger you make that foundation, the easier it is to grow and evolve and adapt and change and blah, 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 your design system.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful analogy. I definitely think that it's so underrated because people think that design systems are creating more work, but in short, I feel like it makes things more efficient with good foundations as well, like you said. And so actually, Vicky asked, how do companies usually update and maintain their design systems?
All right, well, a few things here. Every team that I've been on, I've been a design systems team of one besides the first design systems team that I was on. So the first company that I worked for, I was on the design system. Every company since, I've managed and created the design system by myself. And I can't tell you how overwhelming that is. Talk about self-care, right? So So it is really difficult, and there's different scenarios. Either you're on a UX team, you have a 9 to 5 as a UX designer, and you have to find a way to build a design system on the side as like a side hustle as part
Right.
of it. Or it's a shared effort where you're doing it with a researcher, some other person, et cetera, et cetera. Or there's an entire design systems team. The larger the company, the more likely they will have an entire team dedicated to a design system. If not, the smaller the company, the more likely it is that you have to find a way to add a design system on top of your day-to-day. However, I always say that this is like a business one-on-one graph. The more effort you put into a design system in the short term, the more it'll help optimize the long term, right? But if you stretch out that beginning phase, you're always just gonna plateau, and then you might as well have not started the design system effort. So I think a little bit of sacrifice upfront is so much worth it down the line.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, yeah, we are almost at time. So we'll take one more question. So we'll get one from Scott. Scott asks, how would you recommend kicking off creating a design system for a very early startup that needs consistency?
Well, I would say rally as many people as you can rally. Number one, rally as many people as you can rally. Number two, treat the design system like a product. Give it a project management plan. Give it a product roadmap. Give it a place on Jira. Give it a place on Basecamp. Give it a place on Asana. Give it its own project. Treat it like a product. It has a launch date. It has an MVP. It has a roadmap. It has all of the things that a regular product has. And number two, evangelize the heck out of that design system internally. Share it, present it, get buy-in, make it a thing, get people excited about it. Articulate how the company will be saving money because of the design system. And as I finish answering this question, I just want to share that if anybody has a question that we didn't answer and you still want an answer, you can text me on my community number that I just pasted in the chat. You can text me. This is a number, not my personal number. This is a community number. I'm paying $50 an hour. I'm paying $50 a month for this number. So make it worth my while. Ask me any question, 1 p.m., 1 a.m. It doesn't matter. It has smart bits in it that doesn't bother me if I'm asleep. So I'm happy to answer and continue the conversation.
That is amazing. That's the first time I've ever been able to get like a direct number to ask questions. So everyone, use the heck out of that. And I'm sure everyone in this room is so grateful to have you today. Thank you so much for all of your work, all of the resources that you shared with us, all of the visuals. I know I greatly appreciate that. And I look forward to, like having possibly a follow-up to this, diving even deeper to design systems, because this was one heck of a presentation for a Saturday morning, which I absolutely loved. I learned so much. Thank you so much, Miguel.
Thank you so much, students of UXD. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Vicky, Donald, Kendra, all of the entire students of UXD team. Thank you, everybody who joined. I know this was a lot. I'm sorry I couldn't fit in more, but I really hope you found that valuable, and stay connected with me.